Hey, these 7Cs here. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you're having a great day. I want to make an updated, kind of a long-term use review on the Hinderer XM-18. This is the 3-inch in the Wharncliffe. And this comes with that tri-way pivot system. But yeah, so stay tuned. Go, get yourself a cup of coffee or tea, sit back, relax, and I'll see you. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. These 7Cs here. Today I just wanted to talk about, actually just wanted to do like an updated, kind of a long-term use, kind of a review on my XM-18 3-inch in the Wharncliffe blade configuration. If you look back in my archives, I did do a video on this knife. I think it was like last year sometime, but I realized that I've actually, as of today, I've had this knife, I think for a little bit over 2 years now. So I figured, hey, why not, just give my take on just my long-term kind of experience in using and carrying this little guy. So with that being said, let's get right into it. There's not much else to say that's really already been said for many years now. Hinderer knives, they're an icon. They're part of the original holy trinity of knives, and they're considered by many as one of the most bomb-proof, robustly made knives in the market today. Despite all the knives that are out there, all the innovations and all the cool just things that are coming out, I just feel like Hinderer knives still really very comfortably established itself as just a really well-made, just very durable, knives to use and carry. Its reputation as hard-use tools is really legendary, and there's a reason why folks who are in rather stressful occupations and knife enthusiasts alike, carry and use Hinderer knives. I've had several Hinderers in the past, and in my experience, they truly are, built tough and designed to be used. Their structural tolerances are on par with Chris Reeve knives, while its design language is more tactical in nature, as you can see here. I've had this XM-18 3-inch Wharncliffe, like I said, for a little bit over 2 years now. And I feel like this knife has really proven itself to be a truly robust workhorse of an everyday carry folder. But there's also a few things I do want to point out that are worth considering if you're looking to get a Hinderer. Before I go into that, I just want to go over the specs really quick. So you get a blade length of 3 inches of CPM 20 CV steel. So it seems like Hinderer has really switched over to 20 CV in all of their knives in the last few years. You do get a cutting length about 2.63 inches. And that's really due to that generous forward finger choil. And then you got a blade thickness of about 0.14 inches. And I'll talk more on that later in terms of how it affects, the cutting performance. And then you get an overall length about 7.13 inches. And then you get a close length of 4.13 inches. And then I think this is a Gen 6, but I think I may be wrong. The way that Hinderer kind of categorizes all the generations, it really depends on which model that you have. So for an XM-18, you might be at a Gen 6, and then for the Eclipse, it might be a Gen 3. For the half track, it might be a Gen 2. So it really depends on which model you're talking about. So I think this is a Gen 6, but I may be wrong. I want to go ahead and really talk about the main reason why I got this knife about 2 years ago. And really it had to do with that tri-way pivot system. So Rick Hinderer came out with this tri-way pivot system about 2 years ago. And I believe this XM-18 was one of the first models that he implemented this tri-way pivot system. And if you're not familiar with this system, essentially the knife, Rick Hinderer engineered the pivot area to be able to accept either Teflon washers, phosphor bronze washers, or bearings, essentially. So this gives the user the option to switch them out as they please. One of the criticisms folks had prior to the tri-way pivot system is that despite Hinderers being, designed as flippers, they didn't flip so well for two reasons. At least two reasons that I see is that the detent tended to be on the weaker side, and the flipper tab, this one right here, was uncomfortable because of the jimping, created a rather pointy interface. So the tri-way pivot system solved that flipping action issue by really dialing in the detent to provide a really crisp, strong action that has become a joy to flip. I don't know if this will come through the video, but I'll just be quiet real quick so you could kind of get a feel for that. Yeah, it just the detent is just dialed in so well. I just love how they just, oh yeah. Anyways, all I can say is that compared to the pre-tri-way era, the action is a huge improvement. Out of all the flippers that I own, I would say this Hinderer has the most pronounced detent. And I love how distinct the detent break is. Overall, I feel like Hinderer did a great job of bringing something fresh and innovative to the market while listening to its customer base. In the 2 years of having this knife, I tried all three options, the Teflon, the phosphor bronze, and the bearing, and they all work very well. They all make the knife flip very well, but I would say, and they're all very easy to switch out, But I would say out of all three systems, I definitely prefer the bearing system because it provides the smoothest and most satisfying flipping experience. I would say that if you find yourself using this knife in environments that, that might be more like, that has a lot of debris or particles that you're dealing with, then I would go with either a Teflon or the phosphor bronze washers, mainly because there's just less space for, those things to kind of muck up the action. I feel like Teflon washers give the truest sense of a Hinderer, and that's what they were originally using in the past. But I would say phosphor bronze washers provide a greater degree of smoothness and rigidity due to its, just due to its properties. But I would say overall, Hinderer gives you that option to run the knife really however way you want. And I don't really know any other knives out there that really incorporate such an innovative and user-friendly pivot system as this one. If you do know of any other knives out there, I would love to hear about it. You can leave it in the comments below. Now moving on to the blade. I just love this Wharncliffe blade shape in this 20 CV steel, and I mentioned earlier in the specs that the blade thickness is 0.14 inches. This is something to note because this won't be the sliciest knife in the world. I have other knives out there that are definitely slicier, but yeah, as you can see here, the primary bevel goes about 3/4 of the way up, and due to that blade thickness, you get a lot of blade mass kind of behind that sharpened edge. And so as you cut through material, in my personal experience, when I've cut through cardboard boxes and stuff like that, that material kind of starts to kind of bind up behind that thick edge. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens more often than, my Spydercos and my ZTs and stuff like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is definitely a capable, robust cutter, but it does take a little bit more effort to slice through more dense material. Where this blade shape really excels in is if you use this knife like a utility box cutter, meaning that you'll most likely be using this tip area, I would say probably this half of the cutting edge. And another advantage is that the tip is canted downwards, so that you don't really have to angle your wrist too acutely to take advantage of that really nice robust tip. And really, and my primary preference in my grip is that pinch grip. So I feel like this Wharncliffe shape really just, is really appropriate for that kind of pinch grip, draw cutting type of action. The only downside to this Wharncliffe shaped blade is that because you're using that kind of the tip portion most often, that area will dull. Most of the time it'll dull faster than the back portion. But honestly, that's not really a big issue. I feel like Hinderer does a really great heat treat on their 20 CV, and I've had really no issues or difficulties sharpening this blade on my Spyderco Sharp Maker. Overall, if your cutting task primarily revolves around breaking down boxes, opening packages, letters, precise cutting and piercing, then I say the Wharncliffe is perfect for you. You know, if you're used to like using utility box cutters, then this shape will really feel natural and similar to that. Also, if you are a pinch grip cutter like me, then this shape is perfect, as you can take advantage of that tip portion for your draw cuts. If you need a slicier knife, then Hinderer knives provide like the skinny configurations, and I feel like, yeah, I think that would probably cut a little bit better, but by no means is this a slouch. You know, it'll still cut, you know, fairly well. Now going on to the user maintenance. Now I do want to mention the user maintenance because in the grand scheme of things, this knife is fairly easy to take apart and maintain. But the caveat is that if you have a good amount of blue Loctite in the pivot and you don't have like a spanner, bit, or a tool to hold this side secure, then you're gonna be in for a headache like I had. You know, so first thing is don't use too much Loctite on the pivot, and second is get a spanner tool or bit or something of that nature, and it'll make your life 100% easier. So when I went to take this knife apart a few days ago, it wouldn't come apart for the life of me. You know, as you can see, let me see if you could, you might be able to see, I made some pretty good scratches on this side, and I actually made, as you can see, the pivot screw here is a little bit marred, and there was a lot of marks around that G10. I cleaned it up, but man, I went to war with that pivot, and it just would not come apart. And like I said, mainly it was because I think I had put too much Loctite, and I just didn't have the right like spanner tool to hold that. So what I was using is I was using two kind of flathead screwdrivers. But then the thing about this knife is if you don't have a vise or something to kind of to keep this knife secure while you're using, you know, your two hands, this knife will flip-flop, and the screwdrivers are just going crazy, and it's just marking and dinging up this area, as you can see here, and you know, it dinged up my hands. It is such a pain in the butt. And so I'll just say, you know, if you want to avoid that, you know, maybe get a spanner tool. And I heard actually a penny is a great tool to kind of you know, use on this side, because the penny's a softer material than this stainless steel pivot, so it won't mar up. As you can see what I did, I mean, I didn't jack it up completely, but as you can see, there's a little bit of marring on the edges. No biggie for me, because you know, this is a user. But yeah, it was a war, to the point I got so frustrated, guys, that I ended up taking my screwdriver and just smashing that pivot area like 10-15 times, just like full force, just out of frustration. And yeah, I'm learning to be more patient, guys. You know, like, please, you know, like, don't take that as an example. But what it did show me, guys, is that this knife, man, is so well made, so robust. Because even after I smashed that pivot area, like, as you can see that structurally there is no real damage. There's, you know, nothing got broken. I feel like if it was any other knife, I would have definitely messed it up, guys. But yeah, there's just really, I mean, aside from those scratches, it came apart. You know, I managed to take it apart after like hours. Like, literally, it took me a few days. I had to step away from it because I was just so frustrated. But yeah, like, I managed to take it apart. I cleaned this area up, and yeah, like, it was no issues putting, you know, coming back together. It's just a testament, guys. And I mean, it's one thing to, you know, to push your knife to the limit, right? You know, to really push it to the edges of what it was designed to do. But it's another thing when you really abuse your tools, you know. And I don't recommend it, guys, but after what I went through and after I took this apart, cleaned it up and put it back together, I mean, it went back together like nothing happened, honestly. Like it just, I mean, everything's dead centered. It just flips so well. And I think it's just really a testament to how robustly made, how bomb-proof of a knife this XM-18 is, man. So, you know, please just learn from my you know, my struggle, guys. And yeah, it gave me just a renewed appreciation and respect for Hinderer knives. And just for this XM-18, guys, this knife is just, I mean, I'm even now more confident that this knife can take a beating and it will be, I mean, it will just take it. It'll take it like a champ, you know? So yeah, with that being said, moving on to the handle, there's not much to say other than it's just very ergonomic. You know, in my small to medium sized hands, it fits very well. I have more than enough real estate. You know, this feels really good when I use that forward finger choil. Yeah, just nothing to write home about. Yeah, I would just, if you do have like medium to large size hands or extra large size hands, I would go with either the 3.5 or maybe the XM-24 because, I mean, it fits me just right, guys. And like I said, I have small to medium size hands. Now, moving on to the flipper tab. Like I mentioned, it is not the most comfortable flipper tab, honestly. Let me bring out, I have a knife out here. This is the ZT-0308. Oh man, this knife is awesome. This is a beast of a knife, guys. But I love this flipper tab. It's super comfortable to engage. But yeah, the Hinderer flipper tabs, they're not known to be the most comfortable flipper tab. But what they are, they're very effective. They're very, I mean, I have never had a slippage. I've never missed it in any way because it is so pointy. Once your finger engages that tab, it just really grips into that meat of your finger and you get like almost 100% flipping engagement. Yeah, I know some people have taken like a Dremel tool and they kind of smooth that point out a little bit, but you know, if you're like a person that just flips their knife out to use every once in a while, then it's really no biggie. But if you're like me or like a lot of knife enthusiasts out there who likes to just flip their knives for hours on end, hundreds of times a day, then after some time it will feel a little uncomfortable, and you will start developing a little bit of a callus, a little bit of desensitization of your finger. But yeah, so I would say it's not the most comfortable flipper tab, but it is really effective. Another kind of thing I do want to mention is this whole area, and a lot of people have said this, that this landing zone, like this whole area is there. I mean, Hinderer, and he does like a pretty aggressive jimping, and so every time your finger lands in that area and kind of slides like so, you will feel it, you know. And so after some time, it will kind of raw up your finger a little bit. I mean, I've had this knife, like I said, for 2 years, so it doesn't bother me much. But I remember that when I first got this knife, man, that was, it was, kind of uncomfortable. But like I said, if you're like, if you wear gloves or if you're, just using the knife here and there throughout the day, it really isn't going to be an issue. I mean, I am going to say that jimping is really effective. And I think that's really what's super consistent about Hinderer knives, is that everything, all the design elements are really effective, guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, he really did design this knife to be a user. Not so much a fidget toy. I mean, it is definitely like very fidgety, especially now that they've really dialed in that detent, that flipping action. But I mean, it's truly meant to be a workhorse of a knife, And so I think every design element has to work. I think he really prioritized the effectiveness of the design versus like the comfortability, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. I'll say that. Let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, I think really that's it. I mean, so, over the 2 years that I've used and carried this knife, it's been just, I mean, everything that it was reputed to be and more. You know, like this is one of those lifetime knives, you know, like there's a reason why, you know, this is, you know, Hinderer knives are considered by so many in the knife community to be, I mean, to be considered that whole, you know, part of that holy trinity of knives, you know, the Chris Reeve, Strider, and Hinderer. You know, now I feel like, you know, now that there's just so many more options out there, you know, there's that kind of that top tiers being stacked, you know. Now you have like the likes of like, just off the top of my head, I'm just blanking out. Oh, Wee Knives, you know, a Riyadh, Koenig, Shiros. You know, there's just so many more options out there. But personally for me, Chris Reeve and Hinderer knives are just still at the very top of the production knife game. I mean, they know what they're doing. They've been in the game for a very long time, and it just really speaks to just the quality and the just the craftsmanship of their knives. You know, these aren't just pretty knives. You know, these aren't just expensive knives. Like, these knives will probably outlast you. You know, these knives are knives that can be given to your kids and possibly to your grandkids, and it's still going to take, you know, everything like a champ. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, with that being said, oh, Hinderer knives are awesome. There's a reason why people tend to have more than one in their rotation. You know, I'm super excited because I did order the Hinderer Eclipse 3.5 in the Bowie blade shape, and that's going to be coming in fairly soon. But yeah, this knife is awesome, guys. All right, with that being said, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it below. I do want to remind folks, you know, try to be respectful, not just, you know, for me, but for the other folks that are, you know, engaging in conversation. You know, I mean, we're all adults here, guys. You know what I'm saying? You know, if you have nothing good to say, then just move on, you know. But like I said, everyone has their opinions. I'm totally cool if you disagree with me in whatever points, but let's just keep it respectful. Let's keep it polite for the knife community. All right, guys, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you later. Bye.